Welcome back. Under review.
Here in the 143, we have brought to you episode number 47.
Yeah, I actually said 47 last episode. It was, in fact, 46.
This is 47.
Jumping the gun here. I just have so much fun doing this that the weeks just seem to fly by.
They fly by.
Is what it really is. Yeah, and so this is actually 47. For those
that
of you.
1 year mark.
We're getting
ever
there.
Closer.
After this, we will be 5 weeks away from 1 year.
That is correct.
So we're just trudging along, waiting for that steak dinner that we're going to treat ourselves to once we hit a year, you know. I mean, I don't think, it gets mentioned a whole lot, but we do put a lot of work into this.
We enjoy what we do.
We do, and one would say this is basically a full-time job. Sometimes people don't always see it that way. They're like, y'all are students. You're supposed to be doing school. And we're like, no, this is our life,
Some of us are trying to make money.
Yeah,
okay.
and this is where it's at. So not that we don't do school. Let me just put that disclaimer in there. We both get a lot of schoolwork done.
There's a healthy balance.
There is a healthy balance, and I think that we just dedicate time to this because this is what's important,
Fact.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to start the show with the stat of the week brought to you by our wonderful sponsor, N. Andrews Logistics. As you can see on the side of Nick's hat, they have the logo as well. Our stat is about last night's game. We had a thriller. Wasn't really a thriller till the fourth quarter of the Monday Night Football game. Bucks versus Saints. Always an exciting one to watch. And this is about Taysom Hill, quarterback out of BYU, if I'm not mistaken.
I couldn't tell you where that
I'm pretty sure he's out of BYU.
He's actually not a quarterback. He is a Swiss Army knife.
That's true. He used to be a quarterback. Now he's a tight end. He's been all over the field. And this stat kind of goes along with that. So last night he caught a touchdown. He received a touchdown. And basically, he now has 9 receiving touchdowns, 9 passing touchdowns, and 9 rushing touchdowns in his career. He is the first player since Frank Gifford in 1964. Now, you may be asking me, Joseph, who is Frank Gifford? Couldn't tell you because I wasn't alive in 1964.
Nope.
So Taysom Hill is just setting records that haven't been set in a long, long time. So good job, Taysom Hill, on that record. And interesting stat for your career.
Very much so. And then the player of the week, he's been in this position very, very many times.
Much deserving.
That is Mr. Joe Burrow.
Joey
I think
Shiesty.
That was probably one of the most interesting games, if not the most interesting game of the week. It was
important.
Bengals Chiefs because it was the huge rematch after the AFC Championship last season. And the Bengals came out on top 27-24. Joe Burrow threw for 286 passing yards, had 2 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. So, 3 total touchdowns on the day for Mr. Joe Burrow.
And he is now 3-0 against the Chiefs.
He is.
In his career.
One might say he owns Patrick Mahomes.
One might say that. And good job, Joey B. Way to make it back to player of the week.
Jamar Chase was back for that game, which was a huge
made an impact.
help for the Cincinnati Bengals. They were missing that stud.
He had
of a wide
7
receiver
for
ones.
97 yards, something like that. So I know Joey B loves having Jamar
Definitely
Chase
made
back.
an impact on the game.
So yeah, let's jump right into the football this week. I don't think we need to talk very long, but we will start with the Cowboys game because we are diehard Cowboys fans
Absolutely.
here. Put up a 33-point fourth quarter.
While giving up none, the game was very, very close, I guess, up until the fourth quarter.
It was 21-19. The Cowboys had the lead going into the fourth.
At one point, it was 19-21, and the Colts were going for 2 to attempt to tie the game. But then they would end up missing that, and then it was just all downhill from there. Jerome Bland, the rookie. 2 interceptions.
One of them was like, strip the ball from the receiver.
Malik Hooker, an interception and a fumble recovery for 6. A nice little scoop and score.
Did we have 2 scoop and scores?
No, but there was another fumble.
Oh, it got
Sam
overturned.
Williams, who picked it up, scored, but then they called it back, and he was down by contact.
And we scored anyways because they can't stop us.
The defense just came out of nowhere in the fourth quarter and slapped the Colts in the face.
The win itself was not as impressive because it's against the Colts, and they have not been doing very well at all. But our defense showed up, and they showed us that in the fourth quarter, when you need them to play, they can't play. And that's what you want to see getting into these tougher games. And then going into the postseason, you want to see, can the defense clutch up when we need them to? They showed absolutely they can with a resounding yes. And then Zeke and Pollard out of the backfield, great. We had over 220 yards rushing.
They were phenomenal. They both had a touchdown. And even our running back 3, Malik Davis, had a touchdown.
And Dak threw for 3 touchdowns. Dak wasn't as impressive.
I think it was only for 186 yards, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was something very, very
low, but a lot of touchdowns. But that was also in part to our defense getting us in great field position every time. He didn't really have to throw for the entirety of the field.
Right.
One thing I would say about Dak, he really kept trying to throw it to Stephon Gilmore. He should have been picked twice.
Stephon Gilmore should have had like 4 interceptions yesterday.
Yeah, you don't throw it to him. Like, just don't throw it in his direction. The rest of their corners are not very good.
In my opinion, CD should have had like 30 catches that game because they were lining up Stephon Gilmore on Michael Gallup.
And we kept throwing it at Michael Gallup.
I would just keep throwing it to CD. CD had a great game. That first touchdown that he had was a nice like fluke deal.
He's beginning to show that he is possibly a top 10 receiver.
In the offseason, it brought up a lot of question about whether or not CD could fill the wide receiver 1 role and if he's even relevant in the league. And I think that this year he has shown that yes, he can be a wide receiver 1, and yes, he is very relevant and plays at an elite level at this league.
He's definitely coming along. I think we were saying at the beginning of the season, we didn't know if he was that 88, the Cowboys 88 or whatever. I think he's becoming, slowly but surely becoming worthy of wearing that number.
Obviously, he's not there yet because he's had
some games where it's been questionable.
I mean, yeah, he still has to. It's just, can he do this at a consistent level?
But
can he do this week in, week out?
He's definitely starting to show as a clear number 1 on the team.
Absolutely.
And then, so yeah, it was really just a defensive game. Colts aren't very good, but it was good to see that we can clutch up in the fourth quarter.
It was frustrating watching quarters 1 to 3, but then when the fourth quarter came, the game was over. So,
Chiefs-Bengals game, probably one of the biggest games this weekend. Bengals won 27-24. And I don't know if it shows more about the Bengals or more about the Chiefs in that game, but it's a tough loss for the Chiefs as they are trying to hold the number 1 spot in the AFC.
Joe Burrow is... Okay, so the Bengals started out the season pretty rough. They lost at the outset to the Steelers, and then they lost week 2 to us, the Cowboys. But then, honestly, since then, they've been kind of cruising. Obviously, I think everyone had this game on the calendar circled because it was supposed to be the big revenge match for the Chiefs. But they unfortunately did not get their revenge. Joe Burrow once again had their way with them.
We've seen a couple times this season where Patrick Mahomes has kind of failed in the fourth quarter to get his team where they need to be. But we've also seen a couple times where he's led the 2-minute drive and won the game. So I think the Chiefs will be fine. They'll make it to the playoffs. They might even still hold the number 1 spot like I know they do right now.
They'll definitely win their division. Obviously, there's no trouble there, if you ask me.
It will be close in the AFC North. However,
I think right now it's looking like the Bengals' division to win because they're now 8-4. The Ravens are 8-4, but Lamar Jackson is injured.
And he is out 1 to 3 weeks, I think.
And the Bengals are on a hot streak. So if they can continue, I think they will definitely steal the AFC North.
Yeah, so the Ravens ended up pulling out a win last second against the Broncos. They made it 10-9. That was a pretty boring game. It was 9-3 for most of the game.
It always is whenever it involves the Broncos, unfortunately.
Because their defense is so good, but their offense is so bad. And but Lamar went out with an injury, kind of scary for Ravens fans. But he should be back 1 to 3 weeks, I think they said. Obviously, they don't want him to rush it because the playoffs are coming up pretty soon. A very interesting detail as well is he is negotiating a long-term contract by himself. So there's some nitty-gritty paperwork stuff there, so I don't know if he would hold out or what. We do have to mention a notable. So one of the bigger games this weekend as well was the Miami Dolphins and 49ers game. Jimmy Garoppolo broke his foot early in the game. He is now out for the season. And a lot of people had the Niners to be like the NFC favorites coming out of the NFC. I think that's changed a little bit. Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft, last name Purdy.
Brock Purdy
played very well, and the Dolphins were not playing very well. Obviously, the Niners defense is really good, but the Dolphins fell to the Niners 33-17. I'm pretty sure.
That is a tough break for the 49ers because
it is.
And the 49ers fans, obviously, because they were looking so good.
They were rolling.
Their defense was crushing everybody. Jimmy G was not playing at an elite level, but he was playing at a high enough level to where y'all are going to win a lot of games. But unfortunately, he goes out with a season-ending injury. Trey Lance is done for the season, and so you got this Brock Purdy, your quarterback 3,
Mr. Irrelevant,
taken at the very, very end of the draft. Obviously, he played a really great game.
He did a really good job coming in. The defense for the 49ers definitely carried them through the game.
Absolutely.
Shut down the Miami offense. I was disappointed because I wanted the Dolphins to win, obviously, because of what Nick and I have going on here. But sadly, it's looking like the Bills are now atop the AFC East.
Yes, sir.
And the Dolphins are second, one game behind, I guess. We'll see how it plays out. By the way, the Dolphins played on Sunday. My hopes have been dashed a little bit because they were just awful against a third-string quarterback rookie year. So I wasn't too promising.
I mean, you had a lot of open receivers, and unfortunately, Tua just couldn't get the ball to him. We had a lot of drop passes, a lot of tipped passes. But the 49ers defense is definitely, for sure, the reason that they were able to beat the Dolphins.
The 49ers defense to me is the second best defense in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Cowboys are first, but that's just what we've seen. So that was an interesting game. Very sad for 49ers fans and for Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think speaking of the AFC East, we should go ahead and talk about the Jets-Vikings game.
Interesting game.
It came down to the wire. Obviously, all the Jets' points at the outset was Greg Zuerlein kicking field goals, and the Vikings were kind of rolling to start the game.
They were, as they usually are.
They came out swinging in the first half, and it looked like they were going to kind of run away with the game, but then the Jets just kept kicking and clawing back, and unfortunately the Jets did fall 22-27, but
the Jets did have a chance.
The Jets had the ball on the 4, the Vikings 4, right? And it was first down. So they had 4 plays
to get
4 yards, and they could not do it.
They got to the 1.
And then, once they didn't get that was like with about, I want to say, 2 or so minutes left to go in the game. They got the ball back with like 50 seconds, but then they turned it over on 4th down, and then the Vikings kneeled the clock out, and that was the end of the game. But it looked like I thought at the end, I was like, the Jets are going to drive down, they're going to score, and then obviously the Vikings are going to have to kick the field goal to try and take this into overtime.
The Vikings get away with yet another interesting...
They squeaked out of that one.
Another squeaked out win. That's a perfect word for it. Did I say the Jets? I meant the Vikings.
Yeah.
They got away with another one. I'm not sure what the Vikings are, honestly. We're 13 games into the season. They are 10-2, I think, now. But I still can't figure it out.
They're obviously going to win the AFC.
They're
NFC
good.
North.
They're really good, but can they clutch up in bright moments? I think we've seen Kirk Cousins fold in a couple of primetime games. I think we still need time to see what they are.
This win was, I would say, a credit to their run game, because that's ultimately what dominated in the first half. Was the Vikings just ran the ball right down the Jets' throat. They couldn't do anything about it. Kirk was, he was just Kirk Cousins. He was average throwing the ball, but it was enough to get the win, and I think that's all that matters for Vikings fans.
I think also we will now talk about the Monday night game, which was actually a really good game in the fourth quarter, as we mentioned before. You had Brady going up against the Saints, and that's always a good game. The Saints have been beating Tom Brady pretty bad in the regular season. And
there's like a running joke that says the Saints play the Super Bowl 2 times a season, and that's when they play Brady and the Buccaneers.
Because they spend most of the season being pretty bad, and then they play the Brady, and they're just super good.
I mean, it looked that same way last night. I mean, I wouldn't say they looked really, really good, but it looked like they were going to walk away with another win.
Andy Dalton came out firing. He did really well yesterday. He had a couple of receivers drop some key passes.
You definitely do not blame that loss on Andy Dalton. Reason being is because, like Joseph said, there were a lot of drop passes. Jarvis Landry dropped a wide-open touchdown pass. Chris Olave dropped a wide-open, 30-yard bomb, which ended in them having to punt because they couldn't convert on third down.
And the biggest one.
Taysom Hill. Unfortunately, we highlighted him at the beginning of this episode, but we're going to have to bring him down a little bit. It was 3rd and 17 with about 3 minutes left to go in the game, okay? And the Saints were still up. It was 16-10 at that point, so you get the first down, and then the game is over because you can just kneel the clock out.
You can run the clock down.
Right? Well, Andy Dalton fires a strike to Taysom Hill about 20 yards downfield. He catches it, brings it down to his chest, and then gets absolutely rocked by the safety over top.
Couldn't hold on.
Drops it, 4th and 17. The Saints have to punt, and then,
And you give
the rest
Brady
is
the ball
history.
back with 2 minutes left in the game. That's where you don't want Brady to
Just
have
go
the
ahead
ball.
and chalk it up as an L.
Brady showed again. This game was similar to the Rams game against the Bucks, where
Yes.
they stall all game with just a field goal or two.
I mean, Brady looked horrible.
And then
Absolutely horrible.
he gets the ball back with 2 minutes left in the fourth. Well, I guess they also had a good drive to make it 10-16 with about 5 minutes left in the fourth.
Their last 2 drives of the game were phenomenal.
Fourth quarter, Brady came out to play, and in the very last drive, he drives down the field like it was no problem, scores with 3 seconds left, and then the Bucks win the game. So it just goes to show that even though he's 45 years old, Brady is still the best
He can just clutch up.
at the 2-minute drive in the fourth quarter.
It's just ridiculous. I know a lot of Julio Jones fans were happy yesterday. It's hard not to root for Julio Jones.
He's awesome.
Because
wish
down in
Dallas
the
would've
red
gotten
zone, at the end of the game, he has this just ridiculous snag.
He snatched the ball out of the air, looked
Out
just
of
like
double
Julio.
coverage, looked like prime 2017 Atlanta Falcons Julio Jones.
It was a great catch, and it put him right in a position to score at the very end of the game.
And then I thought the game was over, I guess, at 2 separate points because Brady throws the ball over the middle, right, whenever they were in the red zone, and it was to Chris Godwin, and he catches it in the end zone, and that was a touchdown. I was like, okay, that's it. And then they get called back for a holding, and then I was like, okay, maybe the Saints defense is going to clutch up this one play, and then they didn't. Obviously, he throws it to Rachaad White, gets into the end zone for the touchdown and scores, and then the game's over.
It was a very interesting last drive, but it never, at any point were you they had a couple penalties that set them back, and never were you like,
It's
okay,
just
well, that's
so
over for the
hard
Bucks.
to count the Bucks out, Brady and the Bucks, because he's the GOAT, and he will always be the GOAT, and I don't think that it's disputable.
I agree completely. They are now, I want to say
They're 6-6. Is that what you're saying?
6. Is it 6
Yeah.
and 6? Okay, they're 6-6 now, so they're 500. And you don't feel like they are because they have Tom Brady. You don't feel, because they're terrible. Their record is terrible. But the team itself has a lot of talent, and they have Brady. So, and like we said, we needed the Falcons to win too, because come postseason time, it's probably most likely going to be Cowboys and Bucks
Hey,
in the
that
first
is
game.
still a good possibility because
It's probably going to happen. That's what I'm thinking.
I believe the Bucks aren't they? Are they? They have the bye, and then the Falcons. Oh, I'm sorry. No, they don't. The next matchup is the Falcons versus the Bucks, and we need so desperately Marcus Mariota to clutch up. They should have last time.
They should have last game and the game before that. And there's been a couple times Marcus Mariota has thrown a pick at the end of the game.
They
for
should
2
have
weeks in a
actually
row.
beat the Bucs the first time, if you remember, because they had
Yes.
they got the sack on third down, and that would have ultimately been the punt, and then the Falcons could have driven down the field and scored, but then they called a dumb roughing the passer.
Because it was Brady, and he's always going to get those calls. It's like LeBron.
You can't let Brady lose.
But a great last drive last night from Brady, showing that he is still, in fact, the GOAT. And age is not a factor. He also said after the game that there is no retirement in his future. And it sounded like a joke, but knowing Brady, it might not be a joke. So
he's still finding ways to win games, which I think is important because, like we said, the Bucs offense looked absolutely horrendous.
Brady may not be
the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, all the way up until the 6-minute mark.
He may not be what he once was, but you still take him over most of the QBs in the league.
But I think this is a good thing to point out is that the Bucs are just lucky that they're in such a horrible division. Like, it's looking like
they're
they
6-6 and they're a game ahead of
be below 500 and still make the playoffs.
Yep, and that's probably what's going to happen, and we're going to have to play them in the playoffs. So,
and you can't count out playoff Tom because playoff Tom is just ridiculous.
Nope, it's a different season for Tom when they get to the playoffs. But all in all, it was a good week of football, and happy that the Cowboys went away with another win.
I would say nothing new in the NFC East.
Nope.
Eagles won.
Giants and Commanders tied. So that was kind of uneventful.
Boring there. Looked like the Bears were going to squeak out against the Packers.
But they didn't.
The running commentary is that Rodgers owns the Bears, and that showed once again. Unfortunately, I thought the Bears were going to pull it out, but they ended up blowing a lead against the Packers. And once again, NFC North is going to be the Vikings, so nothing changes there. But obviously, as Cowboys fans, we are hopeful. I do believe that this Cowboys team can make a deep playoff push.
As usual. But we'll see.
We just look so talented.
As usual.
Here's we like to end our shows on Under Review. I've brought to you a quote. Since we talked about the Cowboys so much, how about from a Cowboys legend, the Tom Landry? Setting a goal is not the main thing. It is deciding how you will go about achieving it and staying with that plan. That's the truth.
Tom Landry is the man. He
is the GOAT.
Thank y'all for tuning in this week, and we will see you next week with another episode of Under Review.